From a scale of talent point of view, where do you think BFSI GCCs are headed? You think they're likely to grow, stay flat, or degrow in the way of AI? I thought it's only apt in today's episode of GCC Talent Podcast, we spend a little time on what the data is telling us when it comes to BFSI GCCs. Why BFSI GCCs? It's pretty evident, isn't it? 25% of the GCC workforce today work in BFSI. And that's a very large segment. And in terms of the city spread, they're almost equal. Now, I was looking at which are the cities which are housing the maximum number of GCC talent and GCCs. Of course, Bangalore has the lead. Bangalore has 30% of the GCCs and similar amount of workforce. And Mumbai has about 16%. Delhi NCR 16%. Hyderabad is at 15%. Pune, Chennai at about 10%. So that's a kind of a spread. Overall, there is a small percentage, about 5% in tier 2 cities combined put together. So, but overall, that's a significant number, 25%, isn't it? And this is a combination of about 95 BFSI enterprise, which makes into about 185 units. That means many of them, almost 50% of them, have more than single city presence. So that's why it's about 185 units of GCCs. So let's dwell a little deeper into this. I'm a little more interested in going a little deeper into the banking GCCs. Why banking GCCs? Once again, the scale in which they operate. Almost 400,000 people are employed full-time amongst the banking GCCs. And if you look at the bellwethers banking GCCs in India too, they employ about close to 3 lakh people. The top 8 banking GCCs employ 3 lakh people. So I thought we'll go into the banking GCCs in a little more detail today. Let's start with which are the countries they come from. You guessed it right. The highest number of banking GCCs are originated from US, 32%, followed by UK, 16%, followed by Australia, 13%, Switzerland, 7%, Japan, 7%, France, 6%, UAE, 6%, and the rest of the others put together 13%. So just to give an idea of where they're coming from. And if we go deeper, I wanted to look at what has happened in the last 3 years. One of the data points that we have is Greenfield GCCs hired maximum. And my last episode of the Talent Podcast on GCCs, we talked about the BFSI GCCs hiring the maximum, whether it was bellwethers or whether they were in Greenfields. So I counted how many of BFSI GCCs have come to India in the last 3 years, about 22 of them. How many of them hired collectively? About 8,500. Are they big enough? Maybe not, but 8,500 from 22. So some of them have very large numbers. Some of them are financial services companies, so they've hired more niche in terms of the number of people we have. A couple of banks have hired thousands. And in terms of location, very clearly in the Greenfield, which is something not very surprising if you're a follower of Greenfield GCCs, Hyderabad has got 44% of this hirings and GCCs. Bangalore, 31%. The remaining put together at 25%. So maximum number of BFSI GCCs have somehow gone to Hyderabad. 44%, like I said, followed by Bangalore at 31%. What else? If you look at overall BFSI talent pool split, about 5.4 lakh people, about 540,000 people are working in the BFSI GCC space. So one way to look at it is how many of them are banking and how many of them are non-banking. 74%, like I said, is banking. So it goes without saying, non-banking is 26% in terms of talent. And we also want to look deeper into saying, besides the banking and BFSI GCCs, where else do we find such talent? We found that there are about 1.25 million people, that is about 12 lakh and 50,000 people working in the IT services companies. So they're all people working for various banks. I'm sure all of us know that the majority of the revenues, some of the companies, Indian IT service companies, have 30% of the revenue coming from the BFSI companies. So there's a huge amount of talent outside of GCC sitting in the IT services companies. So that's a huge talent pool to look at as well, if you're looking at India as an option for your next BFSI GCC. Now, let us look at what has happened between these 185 units over the last 1 year. The last 1 year, the headcount growth amongst them is about 4%. Give and take, but the scale is higher. Remember, we're talking about a base of almost 4 lakh plus 400,000 plus. 7% of these 4 lakh people have changed jobs in the last 12 months. So people are moving. Of course, they are influenced by the 22 greenfield GCs that has come. So movement is a given. What else? If I look at just the banking GCCs, now from BFSI we go to banking GCCs, just stay with me. The headcount growth here in the banking GCCs is about 4%. And here, the interesting part is about 11% of them have changed jobs. Compared to BFSI as a whole, banking guys seem to be changing more jobs, so 11% change jobs. So it sort of tallies with about 12% attrition the BFSI overall is having. One interesting piece I looked at is the top 6 banks. The top 6 banks, and where are these GCCs hiring from and where are they losing to? So when I looked at the top 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, one common thread is amongst the talent they are hiring, they're mostly hiring from IT services companies. So the top 5 employers they are hiring from are from IT services companies. But when they're losing, interestingly, all of them, there's not a single exception among the top 6 banks where they're all losing to other GCCs, other banking GCCs. So goes without saying, right? It's easy to attract people from IT services companies because of a brand perception and the positioning that the GCCs have got. And once you come to a banking GCC, from an aspiration point of view, you possibly want to move to another banking GCC because you already got ingrained and they find you attractive as well. So that's the trend we have seen amongst the top 6 banks. What else? I also wanted to see if any of these greenfield banking companies which have come in recent times, do they have a different trend? So I studied only one of them and I saw somebody was really hard in massive scale, thousands. And interestingly, in this company, we saw that the attrition is at about 14%. So when you are a greenfield, when you come, you're hiring indiscriminately, sometimes you lose the plot. Most of the banking GCCs have attrition in the range of about 10%. Some of them even have single digits. Whereas greenfield GCCs, the 1 or 2 that we looked at have a double-digit attrition. Should not happen, actually. In a greenfield situation, you're likely to hold talent more than people lose. So I guess some experience of how not to hire from some of the greenfield banking GCCs. What else? There are also financial services companies. Remember, there are a lot of hedge funds which have come in, and some of them have reached critical scale. Many of them are still in the first 3 years of the period in India. We've seen a moderate headcount growth of about 3%, and even attrition among these financial services companies is lower. We see only about 3% of this 3,000 people amongst the hedge funds and other related financial services company losing people. So they only lost 3%. So what do we see amongst the, let's say, the top 5 banking GCCs? What has happened with them? The headcount growth amongst them, you can say, is at about marginal, but 7% of the people have changed jobs as well. But in terms of growth, when I ask some of these leaders, I asked 2 banking GCCs, what was the growth like? One of them said we grew 7% last year. The other one said we grew 9% last year. These are companies which have 30, 40, 50,000 kind of employees in India. So that means growth is happening and they're expecting growth to happen. So what does it tell us about the future of banking GCCs in India? If you look at the top 100 banks based on assets, today we already have about 36 of them in India who already have banking GCCs, right? So you have add 2 of the Indian top banks, HDFC and SBI, which are in the top 100 based on assets. 22 of the top 100 based on assets are Chinese banks. Unlikely Chinese banks will come to India to set up a GCC. So you have a good potential of easily 40 odd banks which have not come to India to set up the GCC. So that's an opportunity. So you have about close to 4 lakh plus people, 400,000 professionals already working in the banking GCC. So that's an opportunity there they can hire from. We talked about 12.5 lakh people working with IT services companies in the banking space. So it's a vast talent pool. It's not that these 40 odd banking GCCs, banks rather, are not exposed to India. I'm sure they're already working with some of the service providers. But that's the next opportunity that we are likely to see, other than the growth that we've already seen. So if you ask me, based on the data we have and the potential of another 40 GCCs can get established via the banks, so we think that the future is still bright as far as the banking GCCs are concerned. So thank you for logging in again. for Expino's GCC Talent Podcast. Till we meet again, bye-bye.